Get strong.
Fire design provocateur wrote Roseanne in 94. Morrow, Mark Rosewater. Fire design provocateur wrote Roseanne in 94. Morrow, Mark Rosewater. Fire design provocateur wrote Roseanne in 94. Morrow, Mark Rosewater. Come on, Morrow, what can you do? This is not a product for you. Tell us why, show us how. Look at these beebles, look at them now. Richard Garfield and Gary Gygax, amateurs didn't make Limax, reserve the list. Drink their blood, come on, Mark, get 'em. Richard Garfield and Gary Gygax, amateurs didn't make Limax, reserve the list. Drink their blood, come on, Mark, get 'em.
Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Bleckman. Phil, how's it going, man?
I am the new heel of the format.
It's true.
Everybody hate on me. I don't care.
It's true.
I don't care.
Fetchlands are banned, guys.
Dude, it's crazy. I have good intent. I have, it's just a good argument to back up why systemically the format is broken. So if we want to have the argument, we should look at the context of the format as a whole, as opposed to just like this card is new and really powerful and I don't like playing against it, therefore it needs to go. Like, intent was good, but let me tell you, that's not how it was received.
Nope. Nope.
For those out of context, I made a whole long Twitter thread about how fetch lands are actually the structural problem in the format, and then every ban that we talk about is inherently created because of fetch lands. We're not going to get into it because that's not what this episode's about. We're going to cover the rest of Crimson Vow and talk about one particular card that's insane. But let me tell you, I stand by everything I said. So go check out the Twitter thread if you want to see all the commotion.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up to the drama because I just think I think it to me is very funny when people say things like, "This is the worst take I've ever seen."
I think it's interesting that I have not posted a Twitter thread like that just got so much flack. Like the response was just both good and bad, was just so wide. Because I'm a nobody. But this time around, it really reminded me of how when we read something, apparently on any social media, I guess in this case Twitter, we just assume that the person has like a really biting tone when they say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had a bunch of people that just assumed that I was saying it as though I was better than them and that I knew better than them and that they knew nothing, like as though I imposed some kind of assumption about the people I was talking to, as opposed to coming from good intention. And I even had a typo in the main thing. The thing that got retweeted the most, I had a fucking.
But that's how you get. That's how you get. If I've learned anything from TikTok, is the way you get massive amounts of interaction is to have like a typo in your argument, so that people glom onto that wrong thing, and they say blah 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 blah, and you had a typo, and you're just like, yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like. I have no issue with anybody who I was saying it to, nor was I saying it to anybody in particular. It was more about the debate as a whole that's gone on with every card we've banned for the last 2.5 years. And I was like, fam, we are getting nowhere every time we do this. So we should probably take a step back, look what's actually wrong, assess how we want to fix what's actually wrong. And then if we want to move up layers as to what's wrong from like fetch lands into like the more, which is like foundational, into like the more systemic stuff, I think that's shit like Days. Cool, we should do that. Yeah. But right now, the argument is just like, look at these deck lists that are winning. And I'm like, they're not winning at a clip that's like at a ban-worthy percentage. But it's like, but they're not fun to play against. And I'm like, fun is subjective. It's not really an argument that you can make against one card in particular against another, unless like the community as a whole, like found it. Like, I know people who really enjoy playing with Monkey. Do I care if it goes? I could give a shit. Like, I'm a Miracles player. It doesn't really matter to me. but at the same time, it's like we can't use fun as a means to be like, yeah, this is good, unless it's something like Underworld Breach, in which case it's actually format warping and oppressive, where the numbers do follow that up. So I don't know. The conversation is one that will be ongoing for the next month until they actually have an announcement. But I hope the announcement is actually something that's better than just we're banning a couple MH2 cards and moving on.
Yeah,
because then we're going to be back here in 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, my argument is that anyone listening to this podcast has not had fun playing Magic for most of their Magic the Gathering career. We play Legacy. We're not here to play Ring Around the Rosie and the Men Without Hats, we can dance video. But anyhow, all that aside, let's finish up talking about Innistrad Crimson Vow. Last time we tuned in, there were like 7 cards spoiled. So now there's a lot spoiled, so we can really go over stuff.
What has anything jumped out to you so far this set?
I haven't seen anything that off the bat to me was like, oh, this is amazing. I've seen some role players,
dude. So I saw one of the cards that was making the rounds on social. I doom scroll a lot, but one of the cards that so Callum had posted a picture of Vampire Slayer, which is a 1 and a white for a 2/2 that says when Vampire Slayer deals damage to a vampire, destroy that creature, right? So it's got Death Touch specifically and only for vampires. And then he shared a thread of somebody who was upset when they print 2-mana 2/2s that just hose a tribe. So they did the same thing for dinosaurs apparently in Ixalan, where there was a 2/2 for 2 that just destroyed a dinosaur. Mm-hmm. And then there was this one dude who was so upset. He's like, I love playing dinosaurs, but they're unplayable because they printed this card. And then everybody like, yeah,
what?
Exactly. That was the response that I had as well. But the logic was so funny because it was like they've printed this unplayable hate bear specifically for the thing that I want to do. Therefore, I can't do it. But because the hate bear is so bad, nobody else is going to play the hate bear. So both the hate bear and the thing that I want to do are both unplayable and can't be played because WotC has decided to make these types of 2/2s. And let me tell you, we all can understand that logic is.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna tell you about living in that headspace in a second. Go on though,
dude. But it is one of those things where the logic that is so far beyond anything that I could personally feel that I could put myself in that. Like, I don't think I could ever be in the headspace where I'm like, this thing that I want to do just can't be done because of this incidental thing that's so innocuous and nobody would ever do it. But now because it exists, I just can't do my thing.
Yeah. And
the logic behind that is so entertaining to me.
Oh man.
So I want to shout out that particular person. You play
Yeah,
your
man.
You go for it. We support
you. Go full T-Rex, dude.
If anybody wants to play
lawyers.
vampires,
eat the lawyers.
Vampire Slayer exists, but you fucking play your vampires, people. Yeah. You play your Edgars and your Sorens.
So during Return to Ravnica Standard, like right after Return to Ravnica came out, I was playing like blue, white, red control, and my win con was Entreat the Angels. In a standard format where you had no top of the deck library manipulation, you just drew it and you were like, "Oh, I got 12 lands in play. I guess I win." But I was like super reactive to the fact that your opponent could like Detention Sphere. Every deck was playing Detention Sphere. There goes all your guys. Or the other card that I was really worried about was the Meteor card, the 2-mana overload, deal 4 damage to everything card. I forget what
Mizium Mortars.
Yeah, Mizium Mortars. I was like, man, people are going to be playing Mizium Mortars and they're going to be playing Detention Sphere. This is right after the set came out, right? And so I put cards in my sideboard to prevent that from happening, and not cards normal cards you would think about putting in. I played Mizium Skin.
Oh yeah, you want to just protect one angel. You're like,
if you can protect. Well, this is the thing. They're 4/4s, right? And if you overloaded it, they got hexproof and +0/+1. So that solved both those problems, right? 2 of these problems in my head that I thought were this is what people are going to be playing. I gotta, like I had just build it up, and then like people were just playing Supreme Verdict, and
Well, yeah, you
it
see,
didn't matter. It just didn't matter.
Zach, the real logic, you outsmarted yourself. You see, the people who would play Mizzium Mortars or Detention Sphere didn't because because Mizzium or whatever the card you're playing.
This pin stops elephants from coming into my house. And do you see any elephants? I think not.
Yeah, nobody's going to send elephants your way because they know that elephants are unplayable, pens are unusable.
Yeah, exactly. But anyhow, we should talk actually about Crimson Vow. How many minutes are we in? Like 20 minutes into this?
How do you feel about Cleave? Do you feel Cleave is actually a cool way to do kicker, or do you think?
I think it's just
really
overload. I think it's like a weird overload. It's fine. Like whatever. Like if you've run out of ideas, Cleave is fine, and it fills a hole for like a weird rule situation you want to create as like this tier, like you're a tier 3 game designer at WotC, and somebody let you use an idea finally.
Dude,
I clap it up for you.
The idea of Cleave that you're just like chopping words off of out of the thing is like the flavor, right, that we're going for.
Yeah.
I saw in a thread that I'm in many a Magic thread, and in one of them they were like, this one person didn't like Cleave because they thought it was clunky and that it's just kicker, done oddly. But they were like, why did they save this for Neon Dynasty and like call it hacking?
Yeah, right. That would have been cool.
Flavor in the digital age where you're changing the text. So now what Cleave has actually done has just made me really hyped for Neon Dynasty. That wasn't the intent, but that's what happened.
Well, all right. So let's talk about as I feel like we invoke Nate's name occasionally, like he's the patron
saint of this podcast.
Oh, he's also the patron saint of 3-mana planeswalkers, because what does Nate always say? You don't sleep on 3-mana planeswalkers.
Don't sleep on them.
And to that end, we have Kaya Geist Hunter. She is a black and a white planeswalker Kaya with 3 loyalty when she enters, and her +1 reads: creatures you control gain death touch until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature token you control. -2 is until end of turn, if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. And then her -6 is exile all graveyards, then create a 1/1 flying white spirit token for each card exiled this way.
Okay, 2 things.
Right?
They Kaya Geistbuster for the memes.
Yeah.
Total layup.
Not afraid of no ghost.
Missed the shot.
I ain't afraid of no
right?
Geist. Yeah.
Exactly. Missed the shot. But that's okay. So this card is obviously just a black-white tokens black-white tokens focused planeswalker, and that
actually doesn't make tokens unless she ultimates.
Doesn't make tokens herself. The -2 is where the power of this card is, because that's Anointed Procession. So that's a 4-mana. It's a 4-mana enchantment. So it's a 4-mana effect that you're getting on a 3-mana card that theoretically you'll then be able to use another turn cycle after the fact. So. Feels fairly obvious, but I think that this card's playability is only as a combo piece for that -2. So if you're playing this and you can minus it, and then you can do something by doubling up on tokens. I don't know what those tokens are, but I can't fathom a world where anybody is doing any of this stuff there with Kaya, because she seems
maybe in modern. There's probably like I think the black-white tokens deck still exists in modern as like a fringe.
Yeah, I could see this doing something on the value side of things if the Anointed Procession effect was a plus, because then you can do it every turn. So you can do like incidental, like Lingering Souls type stuff every turn, and that will generate a bunch of advantage. And that's like powerful, but is a deck built around doing that thing. Whereas here, because it's a minus, and then you have to spend 2 turns before you can do it again and not have her be touched, it's got to be a combo piece. Is there any token in Legacy that you would like to double up?
No, because they're all legendary.
Wow. Dude, no. We can double our Entreat the Angels, bro.
Yeah, there you go. That's the exact thing you want to do, is somehow Draw and treat the angels as your second card for the turn because you've already drawn one during your draw step, right?
Yeah, so you got to put Kaya in. You
Right.
plus it goes to 4, whatever. They don't do anything on their turn, a very common play pattern in Legacy. And then you just draw and treat the angels.
Well, you'll need 6 mana Teferi out so that you can activate Planeswalker abilities as an instant.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's only, and then you need a way to draw a card. So it's only 4-card combo for what would be tapping out 9 mana.
Yeah.
So you need 9 mana plus tapping out plus 2 turn cycles, and you can have like, I don't know, 38 power.
And then your opponent Mizium Mortars them, and then what do you do?
Yeah, that's true. Legacy playable Mizium Mortars always get you.
All right. Well, I'll quickly mention that Welcoming Vampires is a cool card to throw into a EDH vampire deck, and then I want to move directly onto. Oh wait, you got something to say about that?
I got something to say about Welcoming Vampire. I think Welcoming Vampire is legit, man.
Oh yeah.
Whenever one or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Yeah, I mean, I get that. It only
Do you think that's a death and taxes card?
No, so I mean, it's not Legacy playable. 3 mana is way too steep, and it's a 2/3. There's just like more impactful things for that mana cost and that thing to be doing.
For sure.
But this was playable as this is a variant of Bygone Bishop, which was a spirit 3 mana 2/2 that like would investigate every time you cast a creature with a CMC of 3 or less, I believe.
Yeah.
But so like that would trigger more than once a turn, but you'd have to spend 2 mana for every card draw. Because
and Mentor the Meek is similar to this as
Mentor
well.
the Meek is similar. Yeah, I mean, this historically has been a playable effect, not in Legacy, but if you play any of the younger formats, this is an interesting card for white. The fact that it only triggers once each turn, but triggering once each turn is similar to me like the Monarch. You know, it's like imagine if every single thing that you did cantripped, like that's insanely powerful. So I wouldn't sleep on this in the younger formats, but yeah, it's not going to touch Legacy, but it's the best white card in the set.
Yeah.
Right.
I think so far you're correct. I just want a quick shout out to myself as being right about Odric the Blood Curse, also ACAB.
Dude,
how does he get worse? How do you become a vampire and go from 3/4 with a bunch of cool abilities to not have any abilities and being like, I make blood, I'm corrupt?
Yeah, it's fun that now he's hunting the thing that he was, is the flavor.
Is that he's hunting the people?
So my understanding, if I'm not necessarily the best at understanding flavor and lore in terms of card design, but if somebody was like, hey, we know what Odric does, right? He comes in and he has all of the abilities of all of the other creatures that you have's abilities, right? And it's like, okay, that's Odric's flavor. So when he is now a vampire and he is the antithesis of that, what should he do? Well, he should kill all of the things that have all of the abilities that he used to gain when he fought alongside them because he's fighting against them now. So I'm assuming that the blood tokens are representative of him killing all of the creatures that have all of these abilities.
I'll buy that.
Therefore,
I'll buy that.
That's why essentially they have a bounty on their heads when he ETBs to make blood tokens. But you also can't be like, okay, Odric comes down, wrath your board.
So the Dracula thing, all the Dracula cards, very cool.
Very cool.
But I want to preface what I'm about to say with Christy Swanson is trash now. But they should have done Buffy the Vampire Slayer instead. OG, the like Luke Perry, Paul Rubens, that would have been super cool as far as I was concerned. And then Odric would have been the Paul Rubens vampire. Yeah,
I have no rebuttal.
All right, continuing on. Lantern of the Lost is just another one of those type of things. What's that card? Soul Guide Lantern.
It's another one in the line of Relic of Progenitus variants.
Yep.
Pick the one you feel is going to be situationally best for you if you're ever playing this effect in Legacy. But yes, the card will show up. It will not be surprising because it is the same as the other 12 versions of it, with subtle differences that will vary depending on what matters in the format at any given time.
Hull Breacher Horror is a 7 mana 7/8 with flash that can't be countered, and whenever you cast a spell, choose up to one, return a spell to its owner's hand, or return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. I only mention this because this is a Tidespout Tyrant.
It's a fixed Tidespout Tyrant in that you can't return lands, so it's less powerful. But
Sure, you can return spells. Yeah. So that means that you don't have to recast this if your opponent like targets it. If your opponent's like, oh, I'll Swords to Plowshares it, you can just pop the Swords to Plowshares back into his hand, assuming he can't cast it again.
Yeah, I'm going to give the winner chicken dinner to whoever has this on the field, just because they want to get their storm triggers and then bounce the spell itself back to their hand to do it again.
There you go.
Yeah.
I want to mention Bride's Gown as a thing only because I like the fact that another card exists that you can put onto the same creature, and then that creature can be both the bride and the groom.
Yep.
What else?
That makes sense flavorfully. Well, let's talk about the backside here of Panic Spectator with Giggling Culprit is what it says, and that's the dude.
That is the dude. Yeah, that is certainly Jeff Lebowski.
If you're listening to this podcast, you need to go look at Giggling Culprit and tell us that this isn't just like our opinion, man.
Yeah. I think if you're not into that whole brevity thing, you should be watching us on YouTube anyhow.
You know what I'm looking at with Edgar Charmed Groom, and something that is just an aspect of Legacy that will never change?
4-mana 4/4s don't do it.
4-mana 4/4s don't do it, but specifically a card that says when this thing dies. Because the number of times that something dies in the format is so much lower than it just being exiled. Minute. So it's like if you're gonna have dies triggers, it really has to be on like 1 and 2 drops. You can never do anything sweet like this that it would die.
Yeah, I mean this effect specifically is not great because you just spent 4 mana on a creature that's going to come back in like 3 turns. The game's probably over by 3 turns from then, or at least very decided.
I mean, the card is sweet. Not going to see any play though, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't like the art, man. I like the other Edgar art. The other Edgar art's better. He looks mad decrepit in this, and I get that like he just came back from like the deep sleep, but I don't know, man.
Yeah,
why is he not mythic? Why is he not cooler?
Yeah, I was surprised that because the other Edgar was Mardu, like the commander Edgar's Mardu, that I just assumed
black and red, right?
I assumed the Edgar in this set was just going to be a Mardu mythic.
Yeah.
That did something different than the other Edgar. Because, I mean, if you are, I get that this isn't for Legacy, but like if you are an EDH player and you're like, I love vampires, you're still just forever bound to playing the other Edgar, right? Because it's just so much more powerful in every way. And it lets you play 3 colors. So, I mean, I guess if you want to specifically do this one, but it's weird that this is a powered down version of Edgar when it seems like it isn't targeted for not EDH.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Cemetery Gatekeeper. That's the next one that I see as being talk aboutable.
I want to give a quick shout out to Cobbled Lancer and the entire miss that this set is for Legacy playable zombies. I honestly thought when Exploit was coming back, I dabble in zombies. I try and make that deck work in Legacy. I've cast many a Gravecrawler in my time. I thought we were going to get like a 1 or 2 mana Exploit zombie that was going to be like, this is powerful enough to play in the Legacy shell that was giving them something that they were missing, which is like dealing with big creatures or some like consistent sacrifice outlet for more value, anything, literally anything. And the best we got is this guy, a 1 mana 3/3 that you can exile from your yard to draw a card. So shout out to the whole zombies part of this set that didn't quite make it to Legacy. I think it was our best chance for many years.
Yep. Sorry, guys.
Sorry to all of us.
All right. So Cemetery Gatekeeper is a 2/1 first striking vampire for 1 and a red. And it reads, when it enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. Whenever any player plays a land or casts a spell, if it has the same type as the exiled card, Cemetery Gatekeeper deals 2 damage to that player. I think this is maybe legacy playable, like in the same way that like Eidolon of the Revel might be legacy playable.
Yeah, so the Cemetery Cycle, this is like the mythic cycle for this set. I think the most playable cards in this set come in this cycle. This guy, Cemetery Gatekeeper, is interesting because the stats as a 2/1 first striker are just Thalia.
Yep.
So that's not irrelevant. The thing about this one is if you are playing against, like, let's say you want this and you are playing against Storm and you're like, I'm going to hit instant or sorcery to try and tax them. Eidolon of the Great Rebel is just a better way of hosing that style of deck if you can manage double red.
Sure.
I feel like, given that fetch lands break everything, that the thing on turn 2 that this is most likely to hit is a land, in which case this is an Ankh of Mishra that can beat down.
Yeah,
and
which is good.
Which is good if you're in that style of deck. The closest thing that we've had to that is Zozu, and Zozu's 3 mana, which is a leagues different from 2 mana, right? So I feel like Cemetery Gatekeeper reads 1 in a red, first strike, 2/1, Ankh of Mishra. And there's going to be some subset of decks that are going to be interested in that, and will then be able to punish fetch lands because it will cost you 4 mana for every fetch land. So, so here's what as I say that, I want to just clarify our rules thing. It says whenever any player plays a land, if they crack a fetch, that's not considered playing a land, is it?
It is not.
That's just putting a land into play, but it's not playing a land. Okay, so this doesn't actually hit fetch lands.
No, it hits fetch lands. It just doesn't hit the land fetched from the land.
That's what I mean. A fetch land. This isn't going to convert fetch lands into 4.
But it's going to be very rare that you're playing red deck wins and you're not going. Okay, I guess I'll hit your blood-soaked mire. You know, like you're not going to hit a Badlands with it because it's not going to be in their graveyard.
Yeah, it's so close because I think to myself too. I'm like, the red decks that would maybe want this, that are sort of trying to play aggressive. It's like maybe you would play something like this against elves, and then you after you've killed like their first play. So you like bolt their first play, untap, play this, exile their creature. But then I'm like, but they probably can still combo you off from 16.
Well, so, where this is good as far as what it does is it does exile that thing. So it's like a main deck answer to a Reanimator deck, which a Reanimator is traditionally very good against burn, because like even though they take like 8 damage when they play Grizzlebrand, they've got a 7/7 lifelink that just cannot be dealt with, right? But if you can get that creature out of the graveyard before they reanimate it, a rare occurrence, of course, but there is some utility in this card that's like, hey, I don't care if I deal 2 damage to you, but you don't have that Grizzlebrand in your graveyard anymore, you know?
That's actually really interesting that this cycle so the one thing that the Cemetery Cycle that has them, that they all have across the board that like ties them as a cycle, is that they have a clause to exile a card from a graveyard. And yeah, you're probably right that I'm probably being blinded by the bigger effect when the exile a card from a graveyard is just the incidental buy-in for this card. This is probably really good.
A Lantern of Lost Souls or whatever, Lantern of the Lost on a 2/1 first striker that incidentally, if your opponent is playing with Brainstorm, Ponder, you know, what have you, it may do 2 to 4 damage extra during a game.
Yeah, it is interesting too that the exile card can be positional too, because if you want to hit a Snapcaster target, you can get rid of the Uro. Yeah, there's actually a lot of play to that, and this at being 2 mana, it's interesting. I mean, it'll be a role player if it sees any play, but it is cool. That is cool. Yeah. You've made me a lot higher on it than I was coming into the podcast.
Should we talk about Jacob Hawken, Investigator? Is that even I haven't read this card all the way through. Let's read it real fast, right?
Yeah, I've read it and I've thought about it, and yeah, we can.
Okay. So it's a 1 in a blue legendary human advisor, 0/2, and it says tap to draw a card, then exile a card in your hand face down. You may look at the card as long as it remains exiled, then you may pay 6 mana. Okay. If you do transform Investigator and it becomes Hawkins Theory, and that says at the beginning of your, it's a legendary enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at this card as long as it's exiled. Once during each of your turn, you may play a land or cast a spell from the cards exiled by this permanent without paying its mana cost. So I'm going to go with a hard no on this one because you need 6 mana to make it even playable, right?
So I think the issue beyond, yes. So the 6 mana means that you are never going to do it by itself. Mm-hmm. You would need to do something that transforms cards other ways. So cheap ways to transform cards. I saw some people were talking about like this plus Moon Mist, but then you're playing Moon Mist in your deck. Like it's unplayable, right?
Yeah, I just feel like why wouldn't you play like Phyrexian Arena if you really wanted an effect like this? Right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that if there is ever, so this is like the big mythic that you could pair with if they ever print something cheap that incidentally transforms your stuff. So like, let's say there's a 1-drop and it's like sacrifice this transform a permanent, right? And if you go, if that exists, this is a payoff for something that's cheap like that could cheat on mana, right? So the same way that like the way that I was thinking about this card is it'll never see play until something like that is printed. That's reasonable to play. You can fill out the rest of the deck, but it reminds me a lot of how like Colossus Hammer in Hammer Time decks in Modern. It's like, well, Colossus Hammer is unplayable until you pair it with stuff
cheat it.
that cheat the equip cost. So if you look at the equip cost of Colossus Hammer being equivalent to the 6 mana activated ability here, if you can circumvent that activated ability and just get the Hawkins Theory onto the table, then you just have half of an Omniscience and half of a Phyrexian Arena on the table until they remove it. And it's a legendary enchantment and that's fine. So until something like that happens, this is not going to see any play outside of your EDH tables, and that's fine.
I just want to take a flavor second here and talk about what is he seeing in his microscope, in his magnifying glass. What is that theory? Are those Phyrexians?
Have the Phyrexians invaded here too?
What's going on there? I see some eyeballs. I see like a face mask, maybe a hood.
I mean, if the Phyrexians are also invading Innistrad, they're building.
Is he just looking at like a painting of Invoke Prejudice? Because that's not okay.
That's not okay either.
No.
I feel like this. I mean, with all I know about these effects that got the Dracula treatment is that they took the characters from the Dracula story and then built them.
And he's Jonathan Harker, I bet, right?
He's Harker, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
I just watched that last night. The Bram Stoker Dracula with this would be the Keanu Reeves character of the movie.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it was
great movie. Great movie, by the way.
It's very clear from the reskins, from the Dracula reskins, that they just took the characters from Dracula and did top-down designs for them so that they could do the reskins.
Yeah.
So that's why this is like the name is like just like tangential to Harker, and it's like way over the top in terms of like what it does, and it's unique in that way, and that's why it can be mythic.
Okay, well let's keep going. Do you see anything else here? Like Averbrook Caretaker looks too expensive. Creepy Puppeteer too expensive.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards that are interesting. I mean, there's incidental stuff that's been creeped.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Festivities. That's a creeped Blazing Volley. So Blazing Volley will never see play again. You will only see End the Festivities. The difference is that Blazing Volley deals 1 damage to creatures your opponents control, and the Festivities deals 1 damage to creatures your opponent control plus planeswalkers they control plus them.
Where's End the Festivities at?
It's further down, but that's one of the cards that it's just like one of the it's a power creep upgrade. So it just does everything that Blazing Volley does, but also hits planeswalkers and them. So it's a 1 damage burn spell on top of everything else. Aim for the Head is a 2 and a black that is a mind rot, except it has the option to exile a zombie, or the variant is that it exiles 2 cards from their hand as opposed to discards 2 cards. So it's just
for those of you who are playing Mind Rot in Legacy.
Another power creep on Mind Rot. I do want to talk about the rest of the Cemetery Cycle, except for the black card, because the black part of the Cemetery Cycle is unplayable. It's like laughable how much worse the black card is compared to the rest of the cycle.
let me pop up to the set itself so we can look right at that cemetery. Okay, so we've got Cemetery Protector.
So Cemetery Protector is a 3/4 flash. When it ETBs, exile a card from a graveyard. When you play a land or cast a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, create a 1/1 human creature token. So it's 4 mana, really steep. We've seen 3 mana, 3/4 flash creatures are playable. Read Endurance. I get that it also has reach and is a mana cheaper, but that card is, obviously pushed. But this is in a similar space. And it's contained. So it is incidental graveyard hate, and it's a contained cannon. So if you exile a land and then you play lands, or you exile a creature and play creatures, you just get to make bodies. Will it see play? Probably not, but reasonable. I think Cemetery Illuminator is the most interesting card of the set of if it sees play or not, because everything about it looks good, but it may not actually be powerful enough. So it's Cemetery Illuminator is the blue part of the cycle. It's 1 blue for a 2/3 that's flying. When it ETBs or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. So it can continue exiling cards from a graveyard, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And then it says you can look at the top of your library at any time. And once per turn, you can cast a spell from the top of your library if it shares a card type with the card exiled, with a card exiled with Cemetery Illuminator. So theoretically, you can keep exiling cards with it, and therefore you can cast more cards off the top of your deck. Or you can focus your deck around one type and then try and target that type.
And it's a spirit, which I think, we've been talking about this back and forth. Like, I think that we're getting closer and closer to a legacy playable spirit deck.
I agree, because Mausoleum Wanderer is actually a good card.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can more or less play your entire spirits deck at instant speed, and you have a bunch of ways to deal with things that otherwise a tribal deck would have a hard time dealing with. So, for example, tribal decks
Reanimator.
for Reanimator. I mean, this deck is blue, so it would be able to have counter magic, but stuff that tribal decks usually have issues with are things like Merit Lage, right? It's just hard to play certain kinds of removal and deal with those types of things when you're a tribal deck that's like got to commit creatures to the board and it's just a bunch of power and toughness. And in matchups where that's power and toughness just doesn't matter, you will usually struggle. But they have Mausoleum Wanderer, which is just a better curse catcher. They just got Shacklegeist, which is a 2 mana 2/2 that says tap 2 spirits to tap a creature, which is really powerful to just like beat up against things like elves, where you can tap a bunch of their board if they're trying to swing for you with a Craterhoof Behemoth, or you can win races against D&T. They have Rattle Chain, so you can play entirely at instant speed. They have Selfless Saber, so you can protect your board from whatever you want. I think Cemetery Illuminator is interesting in that space, but I also think it's interesting as a threat that, A, like you said, exiling cards from graveyards incidentally in your main board is really nice. But B, man, when you see a card that just works so nicely with Predict, you're just like, oh man, I gotta have it. I just gotta have it. I know that they printed Expressive Iteration and another version of Expressive Iteration in the set, but like, don't you just want to predict? Don't you just long to do that? Like, we all do, right? That's not just me. Like, we all want to predict.
Casting Predict and getting 2 cards off, it's pretty great.
Feels so good.
All right.
Dude, you want to know what would be sick? You exile an instant, and then there's a Predict on top of your deck. And then you cast the Predict, but you can look at the top of your library anytime. So with the Predict on the stack, I'm going to look at the top card of my library. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yo, I'm hyped. Now I'm hyped for that Magical Christmas Land scenario.
Yep.
Yo, let's fucking go.
All right. Well,
Zach.
Let's talk about Cemetery Prowler.
Let's fucking go, bro.
Let's talk about Cemetery Prowler. He's a 3/4 for 1 and 2 green with Vigilance. Same thing when he enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from the graveyard. Spells you cast cost 1 less for each card type they share with the cards exiled with Cemetery Prowler.
Okay, so it has the
Tell
same
me about
stats. Same stats as Endurance, except it's got Vigilance, right? It has the ETB or attack clause, which means that it is manaless to remove cards from graveyards.
Mhm.
So where in the space between Scavenging Ooze and Endurance is this playable or not at all because of the space that it's in? The spells cost one less part of it. Who gives a shit? All the spells already cost nothing.
Yeah, that's fine. Like that's not going to change a whole lot. So that you can cast your next Cemetery Prowler for 2 mana.
Sweet.
I think this is tough. So I think this is slightly above Scavenging Ooze, which we have not been playing for a very long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a Jund deck plays it as an incidental card they just get to play. But I haven't played with Scavenging Ooze in years. I think I would play this before I played Scavenging Ooze, but I think I'd rather still play Endurance.
Oh yeah, I think that like this isn't going to come for the Endurance slot. I think just on stats though, we know that a 3/4 for 3 is playable even if Reach is a big deal on Endurance.
Ever since Serendib a free,
we know this. I think is the interesting part of this card. I think is it's tough because Scavenging Ooze is something that you can Green Sun Zenith for, and then it can get big if you exile creatures. But this being something that you can Green Sun Zenith for, and then it ETBs to get rid of a card. So you get that card for free. So let's say you Green Sun for Scavenging Ooze, and then use the green mana to exile a card from their yard. It would be the same amount of mana to do it on the same turn if you just Green Sun Zenith for this. So as a bullet for a graveyard hate card, the initial mana investment is the same off of a Green Sun Zenith to get the first card. So we're at parity there. The difference, though, is that this would need to attack to get any other cards, which means that you can't, like, Gaia's Cradle mass get rid of their yard if you have creatures. So that's push and pull. But if you're not in an Elves deck that would have access to that kind of mana, let's say you're something closer to a Maverick style deck, right? This doesn't have the life gain from Scavenging Ooze, which could be relevant. But the fact that it's a 3/4 body immediately means that it's out of a lot of removal range. Which could be also just the fact that it's out of bolt range could be relevant at the get-go. And because it has vigilance, it means that you can both attack and block. And you're probably going to be one of the bigger things on the board.
Vigilance is the big sell here, I think, which is unfortunately not a huge. It's not as flashy as you'd like it to be, right?
It's not, but it is on a big body, right? Like 3/4 in Legacy is very large, and if you are the deck that's playing this, you probably also have the other big shit like Knight of the Reliquary or whatever. But the fact that when it ETBs, by the time it attacks, you'll have removed 2 cards because you get the exile clause on the attack as well. So this card is like way more situational, I think, than the other cards. Like if you're playing Cemetery Illuminator, I feel like you're doing dopey shit like I am with Predict. If you're playing Cemetery Gatekeeper, you're already in a super aggressive deck and you probably are just an Ankh of Mishra.
Yeah.
But this one is way more like situational. This feels way most positional of all of the Cemetery cycles.
I think the biggest issue here is that the second part, what we were considering was Cemetery Gatekeeper as the big part, the second part on this one is not the big part.
I think the second part on Cemetery Prowler is totally incidental. Like if you get the benefit of reducing a cost by 1, it means that there was cost to reduce by 1 in your
in Legacy. In Legacy, it's like not as big a deal. Maybe somewhere else.
If you get it, I imagine it will be a big deal, right? Like if you are a creature deck and you exile a creature and then all of your creatures cost less for the rest of the game that have that ability, cool. But you're already in double green. I can't imagine any other deck outside of Maverick that would have those types of creatures.
Yeah, like what are you going to slam 3 Tarmogoyfs in a turn? In Rug Delver? Come on.
It's weird. It's like I think the exile, the graveyard is actually the bigger effect on this card.
Yeah.
And if it sees play, I think it will just see play as that flex slot where Scavenging Ooze would otherwise go.
Yep.
So of all 5 creatures, I actually think it's the most likely to see legitimate play, even though it's like the main effect that's drawing it to be part of this cycle is the least powered of all of them.
All right. I think that Gatekeeper will be the most likely to see play myself. But let's move on. Let's talk about Hollowed Haunting for all of you enchantments players out there.
Yeah, I mean, hey, picked up a new Throne of the Empty Sigil.
Yeah, Sigil of the Empty Throne.
Cool.
What is
Yeah,
that called?
you got me.
What is that called?
It's way better. You got it. You got it. My dyslexia definitely.
I mean, that's the problem. Is we're both battling our own dyslexia for this. Anyhow, yeah, but this makes Flying Vigilance XXs, where X is the number of enchantments you control. That's pretty good. And like 1 or 2 enchantments onto the board could end the game right after that. So I think one is as good as the other here, but I like this because it keeps giving, but the creatures are bigger each time. That, like, even if they wipe the board with a Terminus or something, like the next one's going to be a 10/10, you know?
Yeah, I think that the fact that this is just a cheaper version of their win condition is good enough, right? Like, if I got an Entreat the Angels, but instead of it being double white, it was 1 and a white X, and everything else about it was more or less the same, except the angels are only as big as the number of angels I have.
Yeah.
I'm still playing that because it's just easier to cast. So in Legacy, the difference of a mana is gigantic. And I get that Enchantress hasn't been seen in quite some time, but hey, upgrades for life. Here we go.
Necroduality, shout outs to all of you zombie players in DH. Moving on.
Whenever a non-token zombie enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Let me tell you, dude, if I could stick a 4-mana enchantment in Legacy, I would have so many Grave Crawlers.
Yeah.
It's just so many.
But like,
many.
It's just copies of them.
Just so many.
And they don't do anything.
So many more things that can't
They're
block.
just 2/1s that can't block.
Just more.
They hit the
more
graveyard and get exiled.
It's funny because zombies inherently are tribe can't block. They're the one tribe that like inherently has a drawback without any of the upgrades.
Yeah.
Like there's no benefits to being zombies, but you know that if there is a playable zombie, 100% cannot block.
Oh yeah. Henrika Domnathi, I don't think is worth mentioning. Maniform Hellkite, good on you, Dragons players. Cultivator Colossus is only interesting because it would be very funny to see this in a lands deck if they actually cast it and just like went off.
Dude, I still am surprised. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised, but cards like this forever now, where we're like, yeah, it would be funny to see this in the top end of the lands deck. I'm like, until they embrace Wrenn and 7, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Like nothing will ever be the better quote top end for lands than Wrenn and 6 as like your arbitrary big fat mythic that would, otherwise win the game if you somehow cast it.
Yep. I don't think any of the cards in the next row are really worth talking about specifically.
Winged Portent, bro. Get your spirit game on.
Yeah, Winged Portent is interesting because that's draw a card for each creature with flying you control.
For 1 blue, but it's an instant.
Yeah, as an instant. Not bad. And yeah, you're correct. This would be great in a spirits deck to just like refill your hand, assuming that your opponent didn't just like isn't about to terminus the board.
How good is this as the top end of a spirits deck?
Yeah,
you're like, I'm gonna go turn 1, turn 2, and then either I can instant speed a divination, or if I top deck this at any point in the game where we're like stalled, or I just like have any reasonable amount of board built out, instant speed, bro. I want
to quickly shout out Lizu with this card because Winged Portent being a magic card that's very similar to Ponder, and Ponder has Jason's face like in the background. This just has a skull in the background. How cool is that?
Yeah, dude, these bats are flying around and they're making the moon a skull.
It's pretty rad.
Pretty rad.
I bet Emrakul would be pissed though.
Dude, Emrakul is just like hanging out in the moon, being like, nobody knows
so metal.
I'm here. Nobody knows, but I am so influential in this world.
You and I have talked about this on chat, but we haven't actually mentioned it on the podcast. Graph Reaver was so close to being good.
Yo, so one of the issues that Legacy Zombies, at least in the way that I have found to be the only real way that you can build it is the thing about zombies is you either can cast a lot of grave crawlers or you have grave crawlers to use a lot of fodder, but your backbone of your deck is grave crawler. And then you have draw engines between grave crawler, carrion feeder, and undead augur, right? So like that 3 is just Yawgmoth Bargain for every, so like it's black mana, lose a life, draw a card, right? Pretty good.
Yep.
But then it's also the one deck where Village Rites is just nutty. Like it's actually very good because you can protect yourself from Swords to Plowshares. You never really have to move until they move. But like just going up 2 cards for 1 mana is very good. But what, and the big upgrade that the deck got recently is Shambling Gas. Shambling Gas is actually a really big deal for that deck. A, because it's another 1-drop that you're happy to sacrifice. But B, it can stem some aggression from turn 1 plays, right? So it's a zombie that can block. It's a 1/1 that can block, which is relevant in these times. But then also being a -1/-1 effect that a bunch of zombies have had is useful in certain games. But then being able to make a treasure is also useful in certain games because it fills the role of being able to accelerate. So you can go like turn 1 Shambling Gas, turn 2 Village Rites, go up a bunch of cards and accelerate. And that's really important. So Shambling Gas is a huge boon for a deck that is close but not playable because it's missing some pieces. One of the pieces that it's missing is removal for big creatures. Zombies can deal with small creatures. Like it has access to give -1/-1 and do shit like that across the board. Like there's a lot of zombies that incidentally like bite people and -1/-1 them. There isn't really anything to destroy fat stuff. So when I was trying out the deck, I was splashing for a bunch of Grists because Grist is a sack outlet, but it can also deal with bigger creatures because zombies, ironically, because you're not contained. The creatures aren't contained. They're just bodies. You have to fill them out with spells, right?
Yeah.
So your big payoff is you have like Phyrexian Tower, but then you have shit like Village Rites and Cabal Therapy and like other means to like actually generate card advantage. It's not like you have over the top stuff like Glimpse or Elvish Visionary with bounce effects. Like you don't have built-in engines the way that other tribes do. You have to use card slots, which means that you're way tighter in your deck space. So if they had Graph Reaver, if Graph Reaver was just exploit a creature hero's downfall, even with the drawback of in your upkeep, you lose a damage because for some reason it needs to have a drawback. Even if it had with the drawback, exploiting a creature, cool. You can probably leverage that for some advantage. If it just said destroy target creature or planeswalker, even if it just said destroy target creature.
Just creature. Yeah.
Just creature. It would have been
a
huge
even
huge boon.
Like even if it was just a terror, you know,
like the one like zombies cannot beat in a single Uro. Like zombies by itself without moving into like another color and really just playing cards devoted to beating the shit that it just arbitrarily cannot beat ever. Like, okay, I'm going to splash white specifically for Swords to Plowshares. Yep. It just straight up can never beat an Uro by itself. Uro by itself blanks entire decks like that. So having something like Graph Weaver that theoretically you could rebuy or use multiple times over to exploit over and over to be a recursion, a removal recursive piece, that would have been huge. And it misses by the narrowest margin. So it was really a heartbreaker to see when Graph Weaver was spoiled because when a card like this is spoiled at rare, you're like, this is probably going to be the best zombie in the set.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. All right, well, moving on. Let's talk about Headless Rider.
Yeah, we love ourselves some Headless Rider.
Speaking of rare zombies, whenever Headless Rider or another non-token zombie you control dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature. He's a 3/1 for 3 mana.
I promise you, I have spent way more time trying to build zombies than probably anybody who's like actually taking it seriously as trying to make it legacy playable.
Yep.
There are so many zombies at 3 mana that have some incidental value effect, none of which are good enough. But if you wanted to play one, Diregraph Colossus is still the best one. Diregraph Colossus can come in and it's potentially gigantic, which is different, a different aspect of what your deck could otherwise promote. And it does the exact same thing of creating a bunch of 2/2s, except instead of when it dies, it's when you cast a zombie. With Gravecrawler, if you have a sacrifice engine, casting and dying are the exact same thing. Yeah. So Diregraph Colossus is just a better version of this and will continue to be the better version of 3-mana value zombie. It's not what Zombies needs. Zombies needs more means to be interactive in ways that matter.
Yeah. All right. Moving on down the line here. You see anything else that's worth mentioning? Mimic Hall. Like, there are some great vampires for EDH. I really appreciate that's a thing. But I don't see a ton of. Well, go on.
This whole patchwork crawler, 1 and a blue for a 1/2 zombie horror.
Yeah.
Exile a creature card from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on this card, and then it has all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with. The disrespect, man. you don't get to print Lazav.
No, it's not even Lazav. You know what it is? It's Marcel. Almost exactly Marcel. For slightly cheaper, a repeatable effect. The only difference is that because they're not like cage counters, that it doesn't remember that it has these things, so you can't like exile it with like an Aetherling and then like continue to like get more and more and more stuff. You just need a lot more mana.
Yeah. I mean,
and this is all repeatable. Marcel says once per turn. This stuff's all repeatable.
Yeah, I get that this card, like what this card is going for, but man, it's fucking disrespectful.
I like it. I think this is a great card for EDH though.
Yeah.
I don't see anything else.
I think Inspired Idea is very close.
Inspired
Idea is the sorcery for 2 and a blue. It says draw 3 cards and it has cleave. So if you don't pay the cleave cost, which is 3 blue, you draw 3 cards and then your maximum hand size is reduced by 3 for the rest of the game. If you pay the cleave cost, you just draw 3 cards. So it's 5 mana, draw 3, or it's 3 mana, draw 3, and then your hand size is reduced by 3. I mean, I think 3 mana is still too steep, particularly because the decks that would play a 3 mana value spell, Uro exists. Yeah. And that's unfortunate that Uro exists to move shit away, value stuff like this out. If this also was a Baneslayer Angel, it would probably get it would get more in. What I think this could be though is it's maybe part of a combo deck. I mean, 3 mana draw 3 is a good rate. Yeah,
because it won't matter until the end of the turn, right? Like,
yeah,
what is it? Dreams, undiscovered dream, not undiscovered dreams. It's 2 mana to draw 3, then discard 3 at the end of the turn.
Ideas Unbound.
Ideas Unbound. There we go. Yeah. It's very much like Ideas Unbound.
Right, which is why I think that if you were playing the combo deck that wants to draw 3, you would play Ideas Unbound.
Yeah,
because the same thing. It's just a mana cheaper. So I feel like this card falls in a space where it's not actually going to see any play. But I mean, just straight 3 mana draw 3 is a very good rate if you're playing a deck that is looking to play to the board.
Yeah.
I don't know where the deck is, but
what about Thirst for Discovery?
Oh, the instant?
Yeah, so it's a 2 and 1 blue for an instant that says draw 3 cards and discard 2 cards unless you discard a basic land card.
I'll be honest with you. If this card came out before Modern Horizons 2, you best believe I would have been playing it in my Blue-White Miracles deck.
Yep.
Like multiple, 3 to 4 copies of this easy in my Miracles deck where I'm slamming 10 basics, right? Now that Modern Horizons 2 came out though, and Prismatic Ending is just the best removal spell since Swords.
Yeah, you got to be playing them duels.
You're so much more incentivized to be playing a third color, and you have other means for card draw. So I feel like this was just 6 months too late.
Yep,
it just needed to come out when you were incentivized to play 2 colors, and this would have been huge. Oh man, if I could have held up Counterspell and then end of turn just draw 3, discard a basic, oh my god, that would have been insane. Yeah. But now between Expressive Iteration and Prismatic Ending, you're just so hardly incentive. You're so much more incentivized to play the third color, reduce your basic count, and just get better card draw and removal anyway. So it's so late. But like, man, yeah, when this card was spoiled, I sent it to you guys, and I was like, unbelievable.
Yep. Looking further along here, Reckless Impulse. Whew. This is 1 in a red for a sorcery. It says exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. I know you're hot on this one. I know you like this one.
I have been fucking arguing with people about this card. Like, yes, people like obviously it has like reminiscent callback to Expressive Iteration. It's 2-mana draw 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
The implications for this, I guess, may I talk about play patterns of this card?
Let's do it. You may. As more to Mordecai's Daistina Koldakar to you, sir.
I'm going to take the As more to Mordecai Daistina Koldakar right now. Exile the top 2 cards of your library for 2 mana. Okay, so it's just 2 mana draw 2. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. Okay, so you can play lands off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Until your next turn, until the end of your next turn.
Yep.
Can we think of the implications of this? Is the closest thing to just straight up 2 mana draw 2 they've ever printed. Exile. Okay. Expressive Iteration gives you some amount of selection, right? You look at the top 3, you are likely to be able to convert 2 cards at any point across the game.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond turn 2. Like if you have a land drop available, you're probably converting 2 cards. Reckless Impulse, you can slam this on turn 2, and it's just 2 mana draw 2. If you hit a land plus literally anything, you're going to get to play both the land next turn and have the card. The difference, though, between this and Expressive is that your opponent has to respect the exiled cards during their next turn. If I exile a Force of Will and a land, next turn, I'm guaranteed to hit my land drop. And because it says I can play those cards, it means that I can alt cast the Force of Will, which means that you have to respect a counter spell on your turn. If I flip over a removal spell, you have to respect a removal spell. The fact that this card is just going to show your opponent incidentally what they have to play around if you hit anything reasonable, aside from the fact that it just gives you raw cards, like raw advantage, your opponent's behavior has to change based on what you flip. If you flip either a removal spell, a counter spell, a threat, like let's say there's a threat that you flip on your, like, okay, you flipped the Ragavan with this, or you flipped name a threat, it doesn't matter. Now, I'm going to have to spend my turn thinking about when that threat comes down next turn. Am I going to cantrip for removal instead of continuing to develop? If I'm respecting a counterspell, do I throw something else out to bait it, thinking that maybe you'll take the bait because you want to convert that spell? If you have a removal spell, am I going to throw something else out in the way before I play the thing I want to play? That way it doesn't die to the removal spell that I know that you have in your hand. The fact that this is going to change how your opponent behaves is insane. On top of the fact that it's the raw cards. An Expressive Iteration is not going to change your play patterns because your opponent is not going to know what you're going to find off the Expressive before they do what they do. So they're just going to do what they were going to do. And then your Expressive Iteration can potentially respond to that. But if you play a proactive Expressive Iteration, you're going to have to present your threat, and then they're just going to react to the threat that you present. This, on Reckless Impulse, they have to respect the possibility of those things happening. They may not happen. You could just choose to not do your shit. You could just choose to be like, I don't want to do that instead. But you have changed your play pattern, potentially making your turn worse. Well, I'm still getting the potential of raw cards. It is insane. Like this is the best card in the set. It's not even remotely close.
Wow.
The
no nuance November, folks.
The fact that also, like, if every non-blue deck that plays red isn't playing 4 of this card, by the time it comes out, you're doing it wrong. You're just doing it wrong. This is insane. It's just raw card advantage that lets you play whatever you're going to play in your deck, and it makes your opponent have to like change their behavior on their turn. It is unreal. Unreal. It's the closest thing to 2 mana draw 2 they've ever printed with no drawback, plus more upside. It has more upside. Like if they printed 1 in a blue, draw 2 cards at sorcery speed, just 1 in blue straight up, draw 2 at sorcery, it's arguable that it's on par, if not worse than this, because this is going to change your opponent's behavior without necessarily having to change yours.
To that end, let's talk about Iruth, Tormented Prophet. That is a 2/4 legendary creature, human wizard, for 1, a blue and a red, and it says, if you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn. How do you feel about this card?
Notable, it says this turn, not until the end of your next turn.
This is true.
unbelievable until the end of. I feel like WotC does not quite understand how powerful the words "until the end of your next turn" are. You're going to have the cards that you exiled and then get to untap.
Yeah.
You're going to untap. What do you even mean? What do you even mean? You get to untap and then use the. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God. Draw 2 and then untap? Fuck. Yeah, Youth is dope. It's a 2/4, so it's statted well. I mean, it's got to be a combo card, right? You play this, and then hopefully you flip your deck over.
Yeah, I mean, I think like any sort of wheel you can pull off, obviously good here. Even like at its base level, like drawing 6 cards with Brainstorm, if you're untapped. You know, let's say this is your 4th turn and you do play a 4th land. You cast Brainstorm and then 6 cards are available to you. I think you're going to figure out ways to make a few of those cards work out for you, even if you have to put cards back.
Yeah, this also strikes me as like high volume combo decks that draw a lot of cards. When I first saw this, one thing that came to mind for me was, I get that it's 2 colors now, but High Tide came to mind for me for this. Just as like raw resources, just being able to like on a combo turn, just flip over a good portion of your deck.
Yeah. I mean, even like let's just think about Blue-Red Delver. You know, like okay, I Brainstorm on my 4th turn, right, and I flip over like 2 Chain Lightnings and a Bolt. Like, cool. Out of 6 cards, and then like just cast them at my opponent. You know, I mean, okay, I had to put a couple cards back, but like you're probably like the cards you put back with Brainstorm are probably going to be, oh, I'll put a Ponder on top, so that adds 2 more cards to my hand next turn when I draw it. You know. Yep. You're gonna, like you know.
I was gonna say, I feel like the trap with this card is the fact that it's blue, because blue has all of the types of cards that you would want to be able to play past this turn.
Mm-hmm.
So it's blue, but it doesn't really function well with counter spells because you have to play them this turn. So
correct.
Unless you want to play them to like protect your combo.
Well, that's why I think like a Blue-Red Delver deck would work well here. You want to be a proactive deck if you're playing this card.
I mean,
you know, it's the same thing with like the Fairy Dragon. Like, yeah, do you want to cast Daze in that deck? No, you're going to play Daze anyhow, and sure, instantly it might work, but like you really want to be playing with Chain Lightnings and Lightning Bolts.
Yeah, I feel like the combo in this is like it takes forever to get it on, and you probably like this probably win more. But this with Sylvan Library, so Sylvan Library lets you draw 2 additional cards, right? And then you would pay the life to keep those cards rather than put them back. This with Sylvan Library just means that you exile the top 6 cards of your library every turn, and then do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's draw wild
for your turn, plus the 2 cards that library lets you draw. But because you draw them, you get to exile them instead, and then you don't have to worry about paying the life to keep them because you have done a replacement effect. So at that point, like if you have a Sylvan Library plus this on the table, I assume that then whatever you do is just going to win the game because you just Grizzle branded yourself, right?
You certainly should. Yeah, you certainly should win the game. I think that this
2-mana card and a 3-mana card, and it's slow.
I think this card has both fair and unfair implications, and I mean, do I think that it's going to be a 4 of in Blue-Red Delver? No, but I could see somebody tossing 1 or 2 in their deck and being like, "Whoops, I had a turn where I just got it." You know,
this strikes me as the things that come to mind are the really cheap card draw effects that usually have some kind of drawback because they're so cheap. So when I first saw this card, things like Words of Wisdom came to mind. So Words of Wisdom, for people who don't know, it's an instant for 1 in a blue. It says you draw cards and then each opponent draws a card. So obviously the downside is you don't want to just give your opponent free resources, but it's cheap card draw that with something like this would mean that you're getting churn through your library at a really efficient raw rate. So it's definitely a cool combo piece. I hope it shows up somewhere. I can't imagine where, but this reminds me of what's that legend that we tried to break from
Lazav?
No, not Lazav. It's the other blue-red legend, but it was a X3, and it got power it got power equal to the number of instant and sorceries in your graveyard from Ikoria, I think.
Oh man,
it's the legend, but it said every time you discard cards for the first time each turn, draw that many cards. I remember Nate was working on that card.
Wow, I can't even remember that card.
I'm forgetting what it is, but it was an X3, and so its power was equal to the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard, and then it just always had 3 toughness. And so if you did it with like Breakthrough, you would draw 4 cards, discard your hand, and then just draw all of the cards that you discarded. So if you discarded 7 cards, you would just draw 7 cards, because her clause was for the first time you discard cards each time, draw that many cards that you discarded. And so it was like a really cool combo piece. And we were like, if you can get that off, but it was 3 mana. So it came down later than you wanted it for a combo deck like that. And then because it was an X3, you could just bolt it and it sucked. But this one being an X4, the fact that Fatal Push doesn't see play and this is can live through a bolt, it means that it strikes me as something that you could, it's a better version of what that deck was trying to do, because it's more resilient. And I hope that exists. So, Nate, if you're listening, yes, Morna Martika Dystina Coldor car has been passed to you, sir. Take it away.
Getting the Asmora Martika Dystina Coldor car. I'll turn this Asmora Martika Dystina Coldor car around right now.
I want to give a shout out to Old Rustine here. We're not going to read what it does because it's irrelevant. It's never going to see play. But this set had Old Rustine, and the set before it had Old Stick Fingers. So there's just a bunch of characters in Innistrad that are old something.
Yeah, these are the spiritual successor to Uncle Istavan, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's just, I just like the idea that people are sitting at a tavern on Innistrad being like, Old Rustine. I can tell you stories about Old Rustine.
Or Old Rustine is definitely the guy at the end of the bar telling you stories. Don't listen to that guy. That's Old Rustine.
About old stick fingers, yeah.
Yeah. I don't see any artifacts worth really mentioning here. Not at all.
I would have liked Skull Scab. It's a 2/2 zombie for blue and a black. It says exploit. Whenever you exploit a non-token creature, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. If instead of saying it whenever a creature you control exploits, if it just said whenever you sacrifice a creature, then we would have been talking. That would have been a cheaper raw rate for zombies that rather than playing Bridge from Below, which is not where you want to be.
Yeah.
But because it's specifically exploit, it's not there. Oh, Wandering Mind. That was a card that people were interested in.
Oh yes, Wandering Mind. That is a 1 blue red 2/1 flyer. It says when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So I guess I'm assuming that they were comparing this to Dig Through Time on a stick.
It's just a bigger impulse, but it happens to be a body. So in combo decks, it's just going to dig you 6 deep. But it also just happens to be a flyer, which can block, which can be valuable for a combo deck looking to buy time. So
it's, I mean, the flying is a bit of a bargain here, because like a 2/1 for 1 mana, we've seen that before. Impulse, we've seen that before. So you're getting flying and 2 extra cards for the price of those things.
Yeah, 6 deep is very deep. Like it's a very good rate. I mean, 3 mana is a lot of mana, but if you are if you're looking for
a thing, yeah,
you're gonna do it well.
Selection is good.
This is the type of value card. It reminded me of Watcher, the hideaway creature from the original monsters, the original Horizons, Modern Horizons. It was the 2/1 with hideaway. That when it left the battlefield.
Watcher Secrets or something.
Watcher of Tomorrows, I think is what it's called.
Watcher of Tomorrows, yeah.
I
like that guy. He's good.
That's 2 mana with hideaway, but it only looks 4 deep. I get that this is a whole mana more, which is a lot, but looking 6 deep, non-creature, non-land is pretty open.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to die.
Yeah, you just get to have it.
Watcher of Tomorrow had to die.
Watcher of Tomorrow had to just be removed from the battlefield somehow. Otherwise, it would just be a 2/1 that couldn't block when you cast it, because it come into ETB's tapped because of hideaway.
All right. Well, I think that that sort of does it for this set. Shout outs to all of the really rad Dracula art once again.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that I'm going to get the Soren the Merciless Dracula reskin.
Yeah. I really want to get, like, I've been thinking about, since I got rid of a lot of my duels, just like trying to jump into Death and Taxes to just have that as a deck. And I kind of want these Mina Harker Thalias.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I hope that everybody from now on, anytime they cast a Thalia, are just like, I'm going to cast Mina Harker.
Cooler character, for sure. Although I think they specifically this version of Mina Harker is second only to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in as far as rewrites are concerned, for a character that has some sort of agency that never had any agency in the original book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're privy to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Definitely don't watch the movie. Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. You heard it. We're not saying don't do it, so you'll do it harder.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, please don't do that. Read the comic book instead. It's by Alan Moore. The comic book is solid. The movie is hot effing garbage. It is. Probably, if I had a top 10 of bad movies, that is somewhere in 5 or 6 for me.
There's just so much other content available.
Yeah, you could do so much with your life in that amount of time that I think you'll be upset at me if you watch this movie. That's how I apologize for even mentioning it.
I'm going to put it this way. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is to the world of movies as Zombie Tribal is to Legacy. You want it to be good. You think it's close.
Yeah.
It's not close.
I want to quick talk about so we've been doing a lot of parodies lately, Phil, and one that you haven't gotten to hear that I've done because it's not really Magic. It's tangentially Magic the Gathering related. Do you remember the collectible card game Rage?
Hell yeah, I do.
So Rage was a werewolf, the Apocalypse like spinoff from Worlds of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade, you know. But anyhow, when I worked in the comic shop in South Jersey, one of the guys there played Rage, and on his Rage box, he had written in Sharpie, "Despite playing Rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage."
Mm.
And you know, I wrote an entire parody and just sent it to him this week, just so he, like, a 35-year-old joke, like I sent to this guy, or maybe not 35, 25-year-old joke I just sent to this guy, and it was great.
Dude, I feel like you and I are of the same ilk because we will sandbag a joke for years.
Yeah.
Years. And then we will pay it off in a way that wasn't even remotely worth the time that we sandbagged it for.
No, the person I sent it to was beside themselves. They were just like, this is great.
Dude, I can respect committing to the bit.
Yeah. Maybe I'll pop that in some other time. But if you're interested, reach out to me, Dirtle Magus on Twitter. I'll send it over to you, or we'll post it. You know what? We haven't done this, and Hackbert had a great idea. We should literally have a channel in our Discord where we post the covers that we've created. So I think that's a smart idea. We'll start doing that. It'll be a lock channel, so you can just like. No, all you'll be able to do is like, you know, make an emoji next to it or whatever. So that way you can just like scroll through and see all of the stuff we've done.
That'd be dope, yeah.
I think that's the best way to handle that. So if you're not, you should join our Discord. If you can't figure out how to join our Discord, I don't know how to tell you how to do that immediately. But if you reach out to Phil or me, we'll gladly give you the Discord invite address. And
happy to share the link. I can tell you. When you join the Discord, I'll happily continue telling you how fucking insanely good Reckless Impulse is, and how we should
get rid of Fetchlands.
We should definitely get rid of Fetchlands. That would solve so many problems.
Cancel Fetchlands.
Cancel Fetchlands. The debate of cancel Fetchlands will just immediately devolve into think of all of the other issues that would arise from it that like we assume would happen as a consequence. That, you know,
I mean, look,
devolve into a slippery slope prediction.
I spent money on Fetchlands, Phil. You can't ban them. I've already
Dude,
spent money on them.
I like the idea of the argument or the thought experiment of if we were to ban fetch lands, how much more expensive do dual lands become? Because fetch lands mean that you can run less duels because fetch lands are just 0 mana tutors. And it also made me realize that we as legacy players are so accustomed to just having perfect mana all the time that we haven't thought about any other utility lands that have been printed in 3 decades that we would ever even consider. We wouldn't even consider it.
If they put out a cycle of lands that produced all 5 mana and colorless, people would still play with fetch lands.
Dude, I like the
if you could play like a whole mana base full of lands that automatically fix your mana every time, counted as islands and whatever, like counted as whatever you needed for your deck, people would still play with fetch lands.
Well, yeah, because then you could fetch them.
Yeah.
But nobody's playing Gemstone Mine and City of Brass anymore because they just have perfect mana anyway.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of people were like, well, it would suck if you don't have fetch lands because then you can't find your basics as easy. And then you would just get hosed by like Blood Moon and Wasteland all the time. And I'm like, I feel like fetch lands have made it so that we forget that the checks on greedy mana bases are meant to be checks on greedy mana bases.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I supposed to play?
How am I supposed to win when my opponent plays a card that specifically hoses my deck? That's not even fair.
What am I supposed to do if I want to be able to cast Leovold and I can't just do that whenever I want to because my mana is perfect? It's
I want to just see people start to play conversion. The card that turns all mountains into plains, just slamming conversion and watching people lose their effing mind when they're like, how do I beat conversion?
It is funny to me that when they are designing cards at R&D, if they make something 2 or 3 colors, they intend for it to be more difficult to cast. But because fetch lands exist, if something is, let's say Leovold, right? Black, blue, green is infinitely easier to cast
than green.
That card was if that card was green, blue, or black, blue.
Yeah.
Right. The double color is actually the bottleneck as opposed to being individual because we have fetch lands. Man, bro, the idea that we all understand the notion of splashing, right?
Yep.
Splashing is free because fetch lands exist, and we have taken that for granted. The fact that you incidentally have, if you're like, I need a red splash, so you're like, okay, I'm going to play a single volcanic island, and now I have 10 tutors for my singular volcanic island, so I can play whatever red cards I want now. Maybe it would be better if that wasn't the case. Maybe it would be better if that's not how it works.
I think do
we remember when Astrolabe got banned because it made you have perfect mana?
Yep. I do remember it.
Yeah, do you remember how that worked? Because your fetch lands could get you your basics, and then the Astrolabe did the other part, which is just make it so you have all colors.
Yep.
Fetch lands make it so you have all colors.
Yeah, well, fuck the proletariat. We can't have people playing those cheap mana bases in our format. That's bullshit.
Yeah, it's weird to incentivize people to play more stable mana bases. We should definitely all just play all of the colors all the time.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Well, I think with that, you can send your letters. You can send your letters to 1515 15-1845 Street in Asbury in Astoria. To Phil's home address.
Just giving away my address on the cast to all of the people who are like
101.
Man.
Walla Walla, Washington. All right. Hey, everyone, have a good week, and we'll see you on the next one.
Place of the Red Delver, channel a dragon's rage, days their first play. Play some Blue Endeavor, channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play. Do you dash a monkey? Do you murk the tides? Do you petty theft all their hope, gutshot all their pride? Don't overthink this, just jam your spells. Ragavan won't get banned, dash him in or show and tell. We're all gonna try to make this okay, lie that this is okay, cry cause this is okay. We're not gonna try to make this okay, lie to make this okay, cry cause this is okay. Play some Blue Endeavor, channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play. Hey, come on, play some Blue Endeavor, channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play. Oh, Delver, dash monkey, Delver. Dash monkey, I said, play some Blue Endeavor. Channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play.
You, want to hear a funny story? So, give or take 5 years ago, they banned Sensei's Divining Top. And I thought, what am I supposed to do now? I guess I'll brew. But you'll never guess what it's like to brew in a format where 30% of the field is just the most efficient threats and answers from Fire Design in the same deck, backed by Daze and Wasteland, but I kept brewing. I didn't win a match for 5 years. But then they printed Mystic Sanctuary. And I dug up my counterbalances. I bought back in. I thought, I'll just look past the train wreck that was War of the Spark. Fetching to counter their spells and instant speeds felt so good. And I thought, this is it. It's build your own Sensei's Divining Top. But then Modern Horizons 2 happened.
Do you dash a monkey? Do you murk the tides? Do you petty theft all their hope, gutshot all their pride? Don't overthink this, just jam your spells. Ragavan won't get banned, dash him in or show and tell. Watsy's power creeping, I don't give a shit. You say the game is breaking, guess what it already did? You're not gonna stop them, money calls the shots. So let's go by Modern Horizons. So we're not gonna cry cause this is okay. Try to make this okay, lie cause this is okay. We're not gonna cry cause this is okay. Try to make this okay, lie cause this is okay. Play some Blue Endeavor, channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play. Hey, come on, play some Blue Endeavor, channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play. Never dash monkey, never, yeah, dash monkey, as they play some Blue Endeavor. Days their play, days their play. You just days their play. Play some Blue Endeavor, channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play. Hey, come on, play some Blue Endeavor, channel the Dragon's Rage, days they first play, days they first play. Silver, dash monkey, silver, yeah, dash monkey, as they play some Blue Endeavor. Yeah, monkey,